Welcome to another episode of SEO Presso podcast. My name is Björn. Today I'm speaking to my favorite boys from California. Sorry, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tyson Stockton and Jordan Koene about education in SEO. Both are founders of Pre-Visible.io, where both are on the mission to provide both educational and productive SEO advice and consulting to global brands, and they are both advisors to the sponsors of these podcasts, Search Metrics. Both have more than 20 years experience in the SEO industry. Jordan was global head of SEO at eBay, the CEO of Search Metrics Inc., and Tyson has been with Search Metrics for more than 6 years, working as VP Client Service and Account Management, where he also leads the professional services department and was responsible for SEO at Sports Warehouse Inc., where he also spent some time in Schutterwald, Germany. I don't even know where that is. SEO Presso is, as always, presented to you by Search Metrics, and Search Metrics offers a SEO and content marketing software that helps enterprise brands to grow organically with Google. And if you want to know more about Search Metrics, go and visit searchmetrics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the SEO Presso podcast on Spotify and all the other beautiful podcast platforms. Jordan and Tyson, it's so good to see you again.
You too, Bjorn. This is great. I'm excited, man.
What's up? We're back together.
It's been a long time now. I think more than a year.
It's been a while. I think last time we were all together, we were getting drinks in the Mission in SF.
Yep. Try beer.
That is very true. Yeah. I love the time. And I actually also love the spirit that we have again being here on the show. And we are speaking today about the educational aspect in SEO, which is a huge topic. And first question that I have to you, Jordan, is,
sure.
SEO is something that you learn on the job. And now you have like different parts of, being an SEO. You can be in an agency as a consultant, or you can work in-house or as a freelancer. So Jordan, in-house or agency, where do you learn more as an SEO?
Oh man, that's a really tough question. And I think that you nailed the real key component to that, which is up until this point right now in the world, the best way for people to learn SEO was through the experience, was through on-the-job training. And so if you think about anything else that is an on-the-job training experience, whether it be becoming an electrician or becoming an amazing craftsman and like being able to carve something or anything like that, the training really comes down to who's your boss, like who is the person teaching you. And so whether it's an agency or if it's an in-house situation, it's the people who surround you that really make you, a great SEO. And like one of my first great SEO mentors was Dennis Hudegebjor, who was at the time the director of SEO at eBay. And I mean, I learned all kinds of hacks and tricks and crazy stuff from that guy because he's a crazy guy. And he kind of like really shaped my initial thinking around like how to become strategic about taking concepts and ideas to SEO. Like how do you like take these like what we would consider hacky SEO things, but actually make them real product tickets and tasks and things that you can do at an enterprise level. So here's one of the first people who really taught me that. So I think to answer your question, Bjorn, it really comes down to who's your boss.
Yeah, I would also say from my experience, I mean, if you work as a consultant in an agency, you can you have a huge variety of industries and also clients, right? So there's a huge variety on top of topics on your plate. However, sometimes they're recurring, like they always are the same. You do keyword research, you do this, you do an audit, you do blah, 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 blah. And so you do your audit, then you deliver the audit, but you are never witnessing the implementation, right? Because there are other stuff and so on. Whereas if you're in-house, you're directly working on a product and you directly have impact on the product that you can steer by yourself. So from my perspective, if you work as an in-house, you should work for a big brand, for a huge site where you have a lot of possibilities to do stuff by yourself. And that's how we learn from my perspective.
Yeah. I would say from my perspective, the best scenario that I could recommend is starting in-house, because some of the points that you just made, Bjorn, But also, I think you learn how you need to work with different stakeholder groups. You learn how to own a project from start to finish. And sometimes when you are in like an agency role, you may only be incorporated in a certain aspect of a project, and you may only be brought in for certain types of projects. Where if you start in-house, you learn of all those nuances, all the challenges of what the clients are. You learn what it's like to actually get things live to site. And then if you go to the agency side, now you have the benefits of learning from multiple clients, learning from multiple types of websites, types of businesses, but you know the pain points of what it takes to actually get things live to site. And so I think it also makes you more successful in an agency when you have that nuance and you have that understanding of what it's like to be on the in-house side and with that true ownership. So yeah, there's advantages to both, but I would say if you could choose, I would start in-house and then go agency. And I think that's just ultimately going to fully round out like the skill set and the profile that you have to offer.
You said something very, very important. Within in-house, you're talking and communicating always to the same people, stakeholder, right? Whereas in consultancy, you talk to a huge variety of different persons from different industries. And from my perspective, communication is a so important part within SEO, stakeholder management itself, right? And I think that's something you can learn first in an agency, and then if you go in-house, then you're very easily can adapt to certain characters and certain people as well within product engineering, within marketing, and so on and so forth. So that's like there's pros of cons of both. Like I heard the last Voices of Search podcast, Tyson, where you and Jordan also kind of touched on the development topic and educational, and there was one thing that you mentioned is companies make SEO the most important channel actually, and there are a lot of studies that show 70+% that they agree that SEO is the most important traffic bringer, actually. So the industry values the importance of it. And from my perspective, most of the time, if the industry says that's important for us, then actually the academical world also needs to adapt to it and then also bring kind of things to universities where you can learn stuff like that. But, you in the US, you're a bit further than we are in Europe. Like, can you a bit explain how do you see the academical world when it comes to SEO educational programs, for example? Is there anything that you can point out specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I guess first thing I would say is you're 100% correct. It has not been really picked up and promoted within academia. So it's still a relatively young discipline. It's a discipline that we're all kind of just learning, whether it's on the in-house, on the, agency side, but it's like all this learn by doing kind of mentality. And so you have some of these elements of the community of SEOs that share resources. And there's a lot of like introduction to SEO material that's just open source. And whether you're looking on people's social handles, YouTube videos, whatever it is, like there's a fair amount of that. And there's a fair amount of the tactical level. But when you get into like managing an enterprise program, like you don't have that. And you don't have it within academia yet. Like we're starting to see it in the US sprout like a little bit, where you have like now components within a digital marketing course, or you have components within and maybe like a 1-day lesson within it. And we recently went through and was doing some research on, where people are finding their information, where people are learning SEO. And we found only like 8 programs within the entire US academia. And it's not to say it's exhaustive, but we only found 8. And so with that, it shows that there is this significant void. We do know that businesses are recognizing the value of SEO. We've seen that in just the budget numbers do it. So in 2020, there's a study that showed that companies with fewer than 250 employees, the average spend within SEO was almost $300K annually. And with businesses over 250 employees, the spend was almost $700K annually. So it's like the money's starting to drive there. And I think that's like a leading piece that then we can expect and we hope, and something that we want to be involved in too, is helping promote that SEO gets picked up more by academia and gets embraced by it, because we've seen some crazy things in like the job market over the last 1.5 to 2 years during this pandemic. And we're seeing an increased demand within our field, our industry. And I think this can also be a great opportunity for, those that are just coming out of the universities to have career opportunities.
Jordan, when you would look at the academical world now, let's assume you're a professor at Yale, or how do you pronounce it? At Yale, right? So not Yale.
No, he's a professor at Yale. Yeah, he's a professor there.
Let's assume you could design a program, like a class, like a course on the University of Yale as a professor. What kind of modules would you look at to also reflect the dynamic that we have within the SEO industry?
Well, I think that this is the big challenge right now that academia has, which is how do you structure the education around this? And the first thing that the academia world needs to help all students who are learning about marketing, because marketing is available probably of the 53,000 universities in the United States, 4,500 of them. So of the 5,300 universities, 4,500 of those are offering some form of marketing, right? Like the majority, like 80% of all the universities and colleges in the United States are offering some type of marketing program or education. And the unfortunate thing is that, and we all know this as SEOs, is that the most important thing to start with is data and analytics. Like even before you get into like the hardcore SEO, like the hardcore SEO stuff, that's like a 200 level class. That's not like the first class. The first class is like, how do you use Google Analytics and why is it important? Like what is traffic? What is a session? Can you please describe to me what a session is versus a visit versus a click? And like, how do you use these data points and KPIs? Because if you don't have that base understanding, the paid search class, the affiliate class, the display class, the digital marketing class, all of those are useless. You need to understand the data first. So that's where these colleges and universities need to start. And the amazing thing is they already have the professors, they already have the knowledge to teach this stuff. They just choose not to teach it, right? It's like not a course that is available today at scale, right? It's not, some places are doing this now, but it's not like readily available at the majority of universities.
If we don't have the situation that you can't just go to a university and you can study SEO and then you have a certificate that says, okay, I'm an SEO, now I apply for a job, right? So you just named like analytics is one of the big parts, but for people that want to become an SEO and they, try to get into the industry, what are the hot topics that they need to know to be, and I use the term that you use in your podcast, what are the key skills they need to know and they need to be able to do in order to be a dangerous SEO?
That's a big one. Tyson, I don't know if you want to start, but
yeah, I can jump in on that. And I think like first starting with like the building blocks. So if like we break it into an academia kind of like structure where you have like your 100, 200, 300 level classes, like your 100s are some of those points that like Jordan's mentioning. You're getting into also like fundamental basics of like data retrieval systems, how-tos, crawling, indexing, all that kind of like bare bones of the function of a search engine. And then you're learning your kind of like basic areas as far as like your content 101, your kind of like more on-page elements, your linking elements, your page speed elements, and you're getting that like paint the full picture of the breadth of SEO. Then I think at your 200 level, and this is where you're starting to become dangerous then, is you're getting then like more advanced tactical levels. So you're also getting more emphasis on like data analysis at scale. Like how do you do that when you're working with a large million-page website, billion-page website, doesn't matter. And then you're also going a lot deeper into like nuances into content creation at scale, like ways of leveraging things like NLP for like broad content expansion opportunities. And so it's like you're getting to that advanced tactical level. And then finally, like the area that SEOs need to know to be really successful, especially at the enterprise level, is going to be all of the soft skill nuances to it. So how do you take those fundamentals and then create an actual SEO strategy and roadmap? And then how do you get budget for that? How do you sell that to other members within an organization? How do you communicate externally? How do you work with these and have like the stakeholder management side? And I think that's the area too that I see the biggest gap in education, because you can get a lot of those 100 and 200 level information by just what's open source in the public. but really learning how do I manage an SEO team? How do I operationalize SEO at scale? And that kind of blending of tactics, strategy, and then the soft skills of management and like working with other teams, that's where it becomes the most challenging, I think, because it's you're using kind of a different side of the brain in that sense. And so that is where I think the real like dangerous, super skillful SEOs exceed the most, is being able to combine the analytical hard skills with those soft skills.
I mean, one of the things, Bjorn, to take note of from the academia world is that some of this education is available, right? Like some of these universities have computer science classes, and they have web development classes where you can learn how to build a web page and structure a website and do these kinds of things. And many of those classes are the foundation. They're the building blocks to becoming a good SEO. So to answer that question, like that's where today the individuals who come straight out of college, they have learned one of two things: some core technical skills because they've studied or they've tried topics like computer science, or the other side, which is more of the creative side of SEO, are the individuals who come out of the critical thinking, creative writing, world. Recently we hired an individual who came out of and had a political science and was heavily involved in the debate world. And this individual, he's going to become a great SEO because he understands how to think critically, but then ultimately get it down into structured ideas. Right. So he's using that political science degree of how do I create different ideas and structure those ideas. And then he's using those debate skills to kind of present or propose those ideas to, our clients or our partners or our engineers. And that's an important skill as much as the hard technical skills like the computer science ones.
Let's move the responsibility a bit up. Our dear common ex-colleague Malte Landwehr, I asked him once how he sees SEO developing in future, and he told me that he thinks that SEO will become a skill that every marketer needs to do, so that we don't have those people sitting in the basement and doing their hacks, but every marketer actually need to do it right. You know the picture. This is our webmaster. Oh, hi, little boy. So let's move that responsibility a bit up, because I would also say, and if you look at studies or traffic streams, then you'd see that 80-90% of traffic is coming from organic. So it's super, super relevant if you are also managing, for example, a digital company, right? So it is a skill that every marketer needs to do. I would also say that every MD, every CEO needs to understand it, right? Yet it's not part of any traditional MBA programs, right? Do you think this is wrong, Jordan? Because you have been in CEO. You should actually be aware of how it works and how you leverage those channels in order to acquire customers, right?
Right. Well, and I don't know what the German translation is for this, Bjorn, so you're going to have to help me with this. But a phrase that Tyson and I hear all the time is, I know enough to be dangerous. And I hate hearing this. This is literally the worst thing a CEO, a managing director.
That's very arrogant.
Right. Oh, I know enough to be dangerous. I'm like, well, if you know enough to be dangerous, you should jump from the cliff now, because you either know what you're doing or you don't know what you're doing, and you got to pick one of the two paths. The reality is that you're right. Executives, leaders, managers, team leads, even down to the team lead, there has to be some common ground around SEO knowledge. And that SEO knowledge doesn't need to mean that you're the operator. It doesn't need to mean that, you need to be able to, drive the car. But all of us here, we all know how to drive a car, but it doesn't mean that we're always in the driver's seat. Right. And so I think that that's the missing component today for leaders and executives, is that they just don't have enough knowledge to feel like they can be a backseat driver, as my wife likes to call me. Right. I'm sure there's a German translation for that one. But the reality is that we all have to get to a place where we feel like our executives and our leaders and our managers are being informed about SEO in the right way. And this is where the problem is. This is where the problem is right now today in the SEO world. The problem right now today is that SEO education and educating our executives is two things. It is a performance dashboard, or it is a bunch of, excuse my language, shitty articles from search engine blah blah blah.com that, somebody wrote about, John Mueller saying something about SEO. But that is not SEO education. Neither of those scenarios help educate a CEO, an MD, a senior manager, a team lead. None of those tools actually educate and inform those people about what SEO is and how they should better manage the outcomes of those investments.
But I think like that notion of that SEO is becoming more diversified within an organization is going to be like a trend. You're always going to have still the need of central like SEO roles that are specific to it to drive it from like a channel and a strategy perspective. But it's like, yeah, content writers are going to be expected to know that. Web developers are going to be expected to know that. And I think that's one of the key areas that within enterprise where education's so much more significant is because the reality is you're not going to get that education of all those roles in academia or other places. So it's like it's going to be up to the SEO manager, SEO directors to evangelize, set up those education paths, set up those resources, whether it's them producing them and developing themselves or using external partners and like different like companies to help build out those resources. But it's like you're not going to have that knowledge in those other skill sets just overnight. And we're going to see the industry and the workplace move quicker into having that expectation. But it's going to come down to the SEOs to then develop that and create those learning paths. And I think that's why education should be an initiative on every single enterprise SEO's roadmap, because one, it's going to help them be a better business partner to their organization. It's going to help ensure that their initiatives are going to get executed and completed. And it's also ultimately going to create more bandwidth and time to create growth initiatives and really lead into more innovative tracks rather than just preventing problems or harm on the site. So rather than a process management function, you can actually develop into like core initiatives and growth items.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. But like, if I just think about it, from my experience, also working for companies and also, listening to other SEOs, like, yet companies, yes, value the importance of SEO and they, we need to have an SEO manager. We need to have somebody who's responsible for SEO, but they have very little budget actually either to, expand the team because it's so important, right? But also have very little budget that they allocated for conferences so that you can send them on the trip or that you can send them to a specific course. So they say, it's a huge thing, SEO, but if it comes to forecasting, personal development versus we need to cut some budget somewhere, I mean, that's completely wrong thing. And then you don't need actually to have an SEO if you don't want to further develop them, right?
Well, I think development is one of the key challenges today because, Bjorn, to your point, the majority of the investment in developing talent has been external, right? So like, I remember my old bosses when I was at eBay, their way of helping me learn how to do SEO better was, Jordan, please get on a plane and go to Seattle so you can go to a conference and talk to a bunch of other people who don't know anything. So that didn't work very well. I mean, I learned some stuff, right? But like that didn't really like, I didn't really grow. What actually, it's one of the components. Let me rephrase that. It is one of the components of learning is to get ideas and learn from the external world. And that's what conferences and events do really well. But the other missing component, Bjorn, and I'm sure you've experienced this in your career, what you need is you need an internal champion. You need a leader who wants to develop the SEO talent to be good at doing certain types of tasks and to do them effectively. You need to become a really good PM and learn how to scope tickets and define tickets for SEO so you can send them to your engineer. You need to learn how to create good content briefs so that those content briefs are utilized by the writers and they write great content that's rich for SEO. You need to be really good at defining KPIs and work with the analytics team to be able to understand what keyword rankings are, right? Like these are skills that a manager doesn't need to understand, but needs to enable that person to be able to do. You need to be able to coach them on how to do these things, because many of these things are not just SEO related. Many of these tasks are being done by other marketing teams and they're being done by other departments, but like learning those core skills is absolutely critical.
Jordan, you were cut off.
Really? Oh, sorry, I'm back.
But you actually touched a good point, and that also leads me to my next question. I see it like this. Yes, you as an SEO have you educate yourself to be on top of things, because I always like to say that SEO is a cross-functional, cross-discipline actually that touches in so many different departments: UX, product management, marketing, data, and so on and so forth, right? So yes, you have to educate yourself, but I also see the role, and that goes back to the first question, as an in-house SEO, also to educate and also to empower and make sure that others understand the power of SEO, what they have to do in their job. Because you have a content team, you have a data team, you have a UX team, and what you actually want them to do is SEO for you. They also need to think about SEO. They also need to think about how to set up landing pages. Content team needs to know how to structure content, stuff like. You don't need to do this, but you need to make sure that they understand how to do the job, so that they also understand SEO, right? So the role of an head of SEO or director as an SEO is exactly what you also explained, but I also see that as kind of the enabler within the company to enable other departments to do SEO right. Do you see that the same way?
Genau, exactly. Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think if there's managers and there's leaders that are listening to this episode that are not necessarily just SEO and not just focused on SEO all the time, what Bjorn just said is exactly what you need to take away, because there are so many other things that you can enable the SEO person you're managing to do in the organization, whether it means breaking down cross-functional challenges, enabling them to learn certain skill sets that they're weak at. One of the skills that I noticed that SEOs are still super weak at is the communication with the content team. Like, how do you communicate with a content person, right? Like, we still try to beat them over the head with a bat that is must use keywords. Like, what is that? That's not useful anymore. And unfortunately, that's still the world we're dealing with from an SEO standpoint.
Yeah, and that's also what you have to be careful of as an SEO, right? Yes, you have to empower the people and make sure that they understand, but you shouldn't be somebody pointing with the finger, hey, you need to do it like this, you should do it like this. It's kind of in development, and communication is a big asset here. Develop them so that they understand without being too pushy and arrogant to say, hey, you need to do what I tell you, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, sometimes we are wrong too as SEOs.
Tyson, you wanted to add something on it?
Well, I think it's a big piece. Yeah, it's a big piece of also being successful at scale. Is like, if you come across as the know all SEO of yeah, you just have to listen to me, you're only going to get so much support and buy-in from those individuals. And I think a lot of times that's where a lot of SEOs come into challenge with the content side, because they come across as this stifling creativity. Well, if you come at it from an education and enablement perspective, you're giving them the tools that then will allow them to still make it creative, make it their own, and they don't have to sit just within a box. And there's actually so many examples of ways that you can do SEO creatively. And so it doesn't have to be so linear. But I think that's also a key piece of getting the buy-in of your organization, is coming across as a good partner, enabler, supporter, to bring those individuals with you on kind of the path and the journey of continuing learning, figuring it out, versus the, hey, I said to do it this way, so you have to do it this way, in which case you're just met with a lot of resentment, struggle, and you're kind of swimming upstream to get people to follow what you're asking them to do. And so it's like, sure, sometimes you can win that battle and you can get the executive buy-in that says like, nope, all content has to go through SEO. But in my experience, you're going to have the best outcome if you approach it as being just a good business partner and kind of bringing that human side into it as well, and being like, what's going to help these individuals actually do their job better, which ultimately is going to help me with my function and my objectives.
Absolutely. And just to round this episode up, I think like we as SEOs, and I don't experience or have seen that in other industries, we are in so fortunate state that, education is happening within the industry through conferences. We have podcasts like this, podcasts like Voices of Search. We have, different blogs, webinars, like software providers doing a lot of webinars, yes, for generating leads, but they're also providing education on specific topics, which are great and for free, by the way, right? You also have like companies like HubSpot. Their entire business is built on educational content, which is great. In the US, there's just this guy, I think his name is Tom Critchlow, who just created this SEO MBA where you can actually learn stuff and do stuff, right? And I think that's a really nice development. And I think being an SEO itself in the industry there's already so much to learn and develop. You just have to pick the right tool and battle at the end of the day based on what you want to learn and know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that that's absolutely right, Bjorn. I think that the SEO, not only the SEO community, but the larger tech community has done a great job of generating really useful educational resources. And there are some structured programs that are actually coming out. There are some universities who are providing certifications around SEO. There are some institutions who focus on digital marketing and digital marketing kind of education that include SEO. However, I think probably our larger German audience will appreciate this. One of the missing components to great education is having some structure, is having a process that kind of helps you learn from a foundational place. And the challenge that I see right now in the market is that there is no starting place. There is no structure to the way that you learn. And some SEOs learn really, really, really fast, and they start to absorb all those resources that you just described. And then other SEOs are struggling because they just don't know exactly where to start. And so they might have, component D, but they don't have component A and B. And so it's very hard. And we've all interviewed these SEOs, right? And it's like, oh, wow, this SEO is really good at doing like D, E, and F, but they can't do A, B, and C. And so like in realities, we should all be able to do A through Z if we want to be good at SEO, right? And that's the challenge today, is we need to be able to create some structure and some organization around how we all learn and develop many of these skills.
Great. That makes a perfect final. Thank you so much for being on the show. I think it was super interesting, also like a super important topic. And there's so much stuff that, we still can learn, even though we have been in the industry. That's the beauty about SEO. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for chatting with me. Thank you for tuning in. We see us next week again on SEO Presso, and here's again on SEO Presso. Ciao.